All right, Larry Krueger here from the Pig in a Pickle Krug Show. I'm even wearing the Krug Show merchandise today. The Pig in a Pickle Krug Show and this 49er video is brought to you by Pig in a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. Check them out. They're in Emeryville. They're in Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. or until they run out. And we will be there for a meet and greet on November the 3rd during the bye week from noon to 6. So stop by and say hello. And this video is also brought to you by Better, the official daily fantasy sponsor of the Krug Show. Use Better to make daily fantasy lineups and win real money. I've done it 4 times already this year. Download the app below. Make sure you use the promo code NINERS, N-I-N-E-R-S, to get your first deposit matched up to $200. All right, last night, I've seen this Niner game like 7 times. But somehow, for whatever reason, last night was the first time that I really saw the up-close version of Brandon Aiyuk's knee injury. And all I got to say is, man, if you're one of these guys that ever calls out these football players as soft, stop doing that, all right? Because they're not soft. And that was an incredible hit. That was an incredible, ugly hit. To watch his leg bend that direction, these guys are warriors, man. These guys are like modern day gladiators, and they go out there and they risk it all. And that was ugly, truly ugly. And now I understand why it was such a severe knee injury. It looked like a hard hit right to the knee, but it was, his whole knee caved in, and he tore 2 different ligaments, and there's probably other issues in there as well. So, first and foremost, our hearts and prayers go out to Brandon Aiyuk, because he's a tough guy. He's a good player. He's a good dude. And, I just wouldn't wish that on anybody. And I saw that and I was like, whoa, that was brutal. And it's a brutal sport. But it's also, week 8. And the season continues, and that's kind of the cruelty of the NFL schedule. It stops for nobody, and the Niners still think of themselves as a Super Bowl contending team, and they very much could get into the playoffs, because all they got to do to get into the playoffs is be better than the Cardinals, the Rams, and the Seahawks, and the Niners are better than the Cardinals, the Rams, and the Seahawks. So I do expect the 49ers are going to find their way to the playoffs. They got to win this week against Dallas. The trade deadline is looming on November the 4th. And what are the Niners going to do to try to replace Brandon Aiyuk? Now, let's go through all the options, and let's try to make sense of this for all you guys. I've heard all the names, and we'll run through all the names, and I'll tell you my mindset. Here are the names that I've heard, at least in the marketplace. Now, I don't know that these guys are available, but this is what I've heard. Courtland Sutton, Denver Broncos. Cooper Kupp, Rams. DeAndre Hopkins, Titans. Deontay Johnson, Carolina Panthers. Garrett Wilson, Jets. Tutu Atwell, Rams. Mike Williams, Jets. Christian Kirk, Jaguars. Treylon Burks, Tennessee Titans. Adam Thielen, Carolina Panthers. Darius Slayton, New York Giants. Jacoby Myers, Las Vegas Raiders. T. Higgins, Cincinnati Bengals. Elijah Moore, Cleveland Browns. So if I missed one, I apologize, but that's what I look at as the marketplace for potential wide receivers. All right, let's talk about what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. First of all, in my opinion, the last thing the 49ers need to do is trade away future draft capital for an old player who's playing out the string and who's not going to be with the team at all going forward. I think that if you're going to trade draft capital, those are players that potentially could be with you for a long time. So you don't want to trade them for guys who are at the end of their career. So I just look at this list and I say, well, first of all, I don't think the Rams would trade you Cooper Kupp, but I also don't like the fact that he's over 30. So over 30 in the NFL is a deal breaker for me. So I would say no to Cooper Kupp. I heard Dante Whitner advocating DeAndre Hopkins. Hopkins was a really good player a couple years ago. He's now 32. Wrong side of 30. No to DeAndre Hopkins. Mike Williams for the Jets. He's 30. He doesn't separate. He's not a deep threat. No Mike Williams. Adam Thielen's 34 years old. He's played his best football. No to Adam Thielen. Okay, so I went through the list. I took out the old guys. No Thielen, no Mike Williams, no DeAndre Hopkins, no Cooper Kupp. Those guys don't fit, I think, because they're just, I don't want to trade for old guys, especially when I got a lot of football left and I've got to think about my wide receiver core beyond this year. You may not have Debo next year. You're not going to have Ayuk next year, most likely, at least for the beginning of the year, probably half the year, if not more. Because of the nature of his injury and the length of the rehab. So what do you got? You got JJ, you got Pearsall, and you got Cowing next year as your receivers. So I'm not going with old guys, okay? That's one. Now, what is Brandon Ayuk for the Niners? Because that's the thing. You've got to try to replace what Ayuk gave you. And, if the Niners' top 3 wide receivers, and they are, Ayuk, Debo, and JJ, in whatever order you want to put them, if you're designing a route tree for those 3 receivers, JJ is, probably taking the intermediate. Debo is running the shallow route, most likely. And Ayuk's going to run the deep route. He has the most deep speed of those guys. Occasionally they'll send Debo deep, but for the most part, Debo and JJ are going to operate underneath, and Ayuk is going to be he's going to have the deep route. So that's really what they need. Whether Ayuk was a burner or not is immaterial. Among the Niner receivers, he was the deep ball guy. So if you're going to replace him, you got to find somebody who can run, somebody who can get deep. And then when Ayuk comes back, you want somebody who can complement Ayuk and JJ and Pearsall and Cowing, because that's probably going to be your wide receiver core. So looking at this list, I need vertical. I need some vertical speed here. So Courtland Sutton, 4.54, 6'4", big receiver for Denver. Denver's not out of it, so I don't think Sutton's available, but whatever. I've heard his name rumored. But 4.54, I mean, he's not a burner. He's not a deep threat. So I don't think he fits. Let's go down the list. Treylon Burks. He's a big, hulking, physical guy, but he runs 4.55. I don't think he fits. Jacoby Myers from the Raiders. Really good ball skills. Really good route runner. Very solid NFL receiver. 4.6, 340. He doesn't fit. He doesn't complement the other receivers. Even T. Higgins, who's a hell of a receiver, he doesn't run great. He's a big receiver, 6'4". He's really good on the sidelines. Not as great in the middle of the field, but he runs 4.54. Pedestrian 40 time. I don't think he's the answer. So I mean, and if you were gonna go for a big receiver who's relatively slow, I'm not trading draft picks for Courtland Sutton. I'm not trading draft picks for Treylon Burks. I'm not trading draft picks for Jacoby Myers. And T. Higgins is a little bit more accomplished, but I'm not trading high picks for T. Higgins in his 4.54. I'd rather go pick Isaiah Hodgins, who went to Berean, high school in Walnut Creek, who's on the New York Giants practice squad, who ran in the low 4.6s. I think he was 4.6 flat or 4.61 coming out at the combine. Isaiah Hodgins has got great ball skills. He's a big receiver. He's a good route runner. If I'm just going to add a slowish, big-bodied receiver, heck, they just had Terrace Marshall, who, by the way, signed with the Raiders today. Congratulations to Terrace Marshall. I hope he plays well for the Raiders. He's a good dude. But, I'd rather have Isaiah Hodgins than trade draft picks away for, tall receivers who run 4.54. I'd rather take Isaiah Hodgins. Isaiah Hodgins is going to run 4.6. He's a tad slower, but he's got great ball skills, a huge catch radius, fantastic hands, and by the way, he's local. And he's a high character kid. So if it comes down to, hey, trade for Courtland Sutton, trade for Treylon Burks, trade for Jacoby Myers, don't bother. Go sign Isaiah Hodgins off the New York Giants practice squad and save your draft picks. Isaiah Hodgins is not T. Higgins, but he may be better than Treylon Burks. He might be a reasonable facsimile of Courtland Sutton, and he doesn't cost you anything. You get him for nothing. You can just pluck him. So that's what I would do from the list. Now, of this list, who would I have interest in? As I said, Ayuk is the deep ball guy. So I'm interested in the guys on this list that can run. Some of them are big name guys, some of them aren't. But let's go through those. Now, Deontay Johnson, I think, is a really good player. Started at Pittsburgh, went to Carolina. He's only 28. He's not a big receiver. He's 5'10", 185. He's not a burner. I mean, we're talking about high 4.4s, low 4.5s. I think he ran 4.53 at the combine. He's played with nothing but horrible quarterbacks. He's playing in, Bryce Young and Andy Dalton in Carolina. I mean, he's playing well. But he had Kenny Pickett with Pittsburgh. Deontay Johnson, he had old Roethlisberger at the beginning. I mean, he's never really played with a top-tier quarterback. I think Deontay Johnson, he plays for Carolina. They're out of it. Deontay Johnson makes a lot of sense. And now he's not a burner per se, but he's a very good, productive receiver who's on the right side of 30, who's available for a reasonable price that you could probably get right away and plug him in, and he can make an impact right away. So I like that name, Deontay Johnson. The other names I like on this list are the guys that can all run. Garrett Wilson, New York Jets. It's going to cost you multiple picks and probably some day 2 picks. But I think this is the guy I'd go after. He ran 4.38. He was awesome at Ohio State. He's one of the best route running guys that I've seen that run sub 4.4. A lot of times guys who have, run in the 4.3s don't run good routes. They don't sell their fakes. They're really, they can get by with just 4.3 speed, and they never saw the value in becoming a defined, crisp route runner. Well, Garrett Wilson's not like that. He is a great route runner, an elite route runner, if you want to call it that. And by the way, on the Deontay Johnson, he was number 7 on ESPN's wide receiver score from a year ago, 7th best wide receiver in the game. So I like Deontay Johnson. I really like Garrett Wilson just because he runs in the 4.3s and he's an impact guy. He's young. He could emerge as the number 1 wide receiver as you say goodbye to Debo, as you transition away from Kittle, as you start to move on down the road. You get a guy like Garrett Wilson. I think his 4.38 speed would complement Ricky Pearsall and Brandon Ayuk and George Kittle quite well. So, and I know the price tag is going to be high. The Jets don't want to move him. Why would they? But they just traded for Devontae Adams. They're going nowhere. And who knows? Maybe there's a strained relationship between Rodgers and Wilson. I don't know. But Wilson is a massive talent. He's the biggest talent on this list, for sure, bar none. And I would want him. To me, he complements what they have. He's a home run hitter. If you got Garrett Wilson, you'd become more dynamic. And I think he could grow in this offense in the next 3 or 4 years and become one of the NFL's better receivers in San Francisco. So I don't think the Jets should move him. I don't know that they will move him. If they're at all open to it, I'm showing up with a couple of 2s saying, hey, here you go. Here's a couple of 2s. You want another pick? I'll throw another pick in there. How about 2 2s and a 5? 2 2s and a 4. I would make the move of significance to get Garrett Wilson. Another guy on the list, Tutu Atwell, the Rams. People say, oh, well, they have Jacob Cowing. Jacob Cowing ran 4.38. Tutu Atwell ran 4.32 at his pro day. He's a much faster guy. He's incredibly field fast. He's one of the best vertical receivers in the entire league. You guys saw it. He just blew by Mooney Ward like Mooney Ward was me. I mean, it was just ridiculous. He just ran right on by Mooney Ward. So if the Rams are willing to move Tutu Atwell, there's reason to believe that they may. He would be on my list. He is a difference maker. And a year from now, you'd have Tutu as your deep ball guy. You still have Cowing as a deep threat. And now you could probably get by with Pearsall and Ayuk coming off a knee injury and just still have those vertical elements in your offense and still be able to complement the receivers you do have. So I love Deontay Johnson, love Garrett Wilson, love the idea of Tutu Atwell. Give you 3 more that are beneath the radar, but I think would be great targets. Christian Kirk, Jacksonville. Jacksonville's going nowhere. Kirk, I loved him at A&M. He's a vertical threat. He's a big-time return man. He's also a vertical threat as a receiver. He runs a solid 4.4, and he's field fast, and he can take a hit. I think on a good team he would play at a higher level than he's ever reached thus far in Arizona and in Jacksonville. So Christian Kirk would be on my list, and I think you could get him for a late day 3 pick. Here's another 2 names that I think you got to remember. Darius Slayton of the New York Giants. Darius Slayton's a big receiver, but Darius Slayton runs 4.39. At that size and that speed, and he's starting to come into his own, I think he might be a sleeper get for the Niners. I love the idea of Darius Slayton. You know, he's got better ball skills than you think. He's improving as a player. He's a big-bodied receiver with strength who should be able to block in the run game. You know the deal with the Niners as a receiver. If you don't block, you don't play. As Belichick said, with the Niners, no block, no rock. Darius Slayton runs 4.39, and he's totally available. So I would totally go after him. The other guy that's really interesting to me is Elijah Moore. You know, the University of Ole Miss has produced some amazing receivers through the years, and Elijah Moore is a major talent who ran 4.35 coming out of Oxford, and he's got great ball skills. Now, he's not the biggest guy. He's not the strongest guy. But if you're looking for, you know, speed to you know, impact the 49ers situation, and then you're looking at Pearsall, he doesn't have big speed. You look at Debo, doesn't have big speed. You look at JJ, no. You look at Ayuk, now coming off the knee injury, no. So they're going to need vertical speed. So those are the names that would intrigue me. If you wanna just a guy, a big, slow veteran receiver, or slowish veteran receiver, don't trade picks for DeAndre Hopkins or Thielen or one of these old guys. Go get Isaiah Hodgins, the former Berean Christian star who's on the Giants practice squad, who's, you know, got great ball skills. He's a legit 6'4". He's a big angular receiver. He can make plays, you know, high point the ball. I mean, he ran 4.61. He's not fast. He doesn't separate. But he's a big physical receiver. And if you want a big physical receiver, I'd rather pluck Hodgins off the Giants practice squad than trade picks for those guys. But if you want a dynamic guy, and that's what the Niners need with Ayuk being out, because he was their deep ball guy. Deontay Johnson, Garrett Wilson, Tutu Atwell, Christian Kirk. If you're looking underneath the radar, Darius Slayton, Elijah Moore. I think those are your options. And, you know, I think Lynch has got to do something. I think he needs to make a couple of moves. I think the Niners could use another linebacker. I think they could use another DB. I think they could use another defensive end. And I definitely think they could use another running back. And they could, now with the Ayuk injury and the receiving core the way it is, you can't lean on a rookie in Ricky Pearsall. He didn't get a lot of separation last week. You see, it takes a while for rookies to transition to the NFL. It's a tall ask to ask Ricky after a year he's been shot to get on the field and lead the 49ers to the Super Bowl. That's a tall ask. So how about you trade some draft capital and you get Garrett Wilson? How about you trade some draft capital and you get Atwell or Kirk or Slayton or Moore, and you give this Niner receiving core a little bit more electric, a little bit more vertical, a little bit more speed. And if you wanted to go the possession receiver route, go get Isaiah Hodgins. He can do the job as well as most of those veteran big receivers that are available via trade. All right, thanks to Pig and a Pickle for being the title sponsor of The Krug Show. Thanks to Better for being the sponsor of this video. Use Better to make daily fantasy lineups and win real money. Download the app below. Make sure you use that promo code Niners to get your first deposit matched up to $200. And thanks to all of you guys for supporting The Krug Show on YouTube.